like a buttercup. You're a Barbie doll. Show them all what I'm made of. Strut down the hall. Won't stop till I get enough.
All right, so ready to dive back into some football. You sent in this Detroit News recap of the Lions-Bills game, and I gotta say, even in a loss, a 12-1 Lions team taking on a 10-3 Bills team, I mean, that's a game that gets anyone excited, right?
Absolutely.
But we're going beyond the box score today, right? Like, think of it as a deep dive, you and me. Like, we're gonna be like football CSI.
Okay.
Sifting through the evidence and uncovering those hidden stories within this game. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it was a wild one for sure.
Oh, yeah.
One of those games you can't take your eyes off.
90 points combined. It felt like every other play was a highlight reel moment.
Yeah, for real.
But let's rewind for a second and kind of set the stage right. The Lions at home trying to clinch a playoff berth for the second straight year against a Bills team, you know, with Super Bowl aspirations.
Well, right.
I mean, this wasn't just another regular season game. This had playoff atmosphere written all over it.
You could feel it, yeah, from the opening kickoff.
Yeah, so let's break down this offensive explosion first.
Mm-hmm.
You know, Josh Allen, the Bills quarterback, I mean, he just had another one of those MVP caliber performances.
Oh, yeah.
He had, 362 passing yards and a couple touchdowns through the air.
Right.
And then on top of that, he rushes for another 68 yards and another 2 touchdowns.
Yeah. He's a problem.
I mean, he can just dissect defenses like it's nothing.
Yeah, it's like he's got a cheat code or something.
But here's the thing that really kind of jumped out at me. Jared Goff, the Lions quarterback, actually outdid Allen in terms of passing yards.
He did.
He threw for 494 yards and 5 touchdowns. He had the hot hand all night long.
For sure.
But and he threw the ball 59 times, which is just insane. That's got to be some kind of statement, right?
It's definitely a bold move, and I think it kind of speaks to a couple of things.
What do you think?
Well, the Bills' defense is good, but maybe they have some weaknesses in the secondary. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
The Lions could have seen that as an opportunity and exploited it, you know?
Right, right.
And also maybe they just didn't have confidence in their running game.
Right.
You know, we'll get into that more later.
Right.
But throwing the ball that many times, even if you're playing as well as Goff, it's risky.
It is.
Tires out your quarterback and puts a ton of pressure on your receivers.
And speaking of receivers, Amon-Ra St. Brown was an absolute monster for the Lions.
He was unreal.
193 receiving yards and a touchdown.
Right.
And the rookie tight end, Sam Laporta, wasn't too far behind. He had 111 yards.
Yeah, those two were the go-to guys.
It felt like at times they were the entire Lions offense.
Yeah, they were for sure. And that reliance on the passing game is something that could come back to bite them later on.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Yeah.
Their running game was basically non-existent.
They only had 48 total rushing yards and 1 touchdown.
Yeah, that kind of imbalance can be a problem.
Yeah.
Especially in the playoffs when teams really clamp down on defense.
Forget-
You got to get that running game going.
Yeah, that lack of a running game definitely raises some questions. Was it the Bills' defense that shut them down, or were the Lions just abandoning the run altogether and just going all in on the pass?
Yeah, it's hard to say for sure, but it's something we'll have to look into.
Something we'll have to dig into more.
Yeah, but before we get too lost in the X's and O's, let's go back to the game itself for a second. You know, those early moments often set the tone for the whole match, and this one was no different.
Oh, yeah, tell me about it. The Bills came out swinging right, scored 2 quick touchdowns, and put the Lions in a 14-0 hole before they could even blink.
It was a statement for sure.
Yeah, talk about a gut punch.
Yeah, it was a classic example of imposing your will right from the start.
Right.
The Bills just established their dominance right away and forced the Lions to play catch-up the rest of the game, which is never easy.
And things didn't get much easier for the Lions as the game went on.
Right.
They had a couple of key miscues, like a failed onside kick attempt in the 4th quarter that really shifted the momentum in the Bills' favor.
You're right about that.
You want to break that down a little bit?
Yeah. So an onside kick is a risky play where instead of kicking the ball deep, the kicking team tries to recover the ball themselves.
Right.
It's usually a last-ditch effort to get back in the game.
When you're down by a lot?
Exactly. So in this case, the Lions were trailing by multiple touchdowns. They needed a miracle, and they decided to go for it.
Makes sense.
But unfortunately, it didn't work out. The Bills recovered the ball, and they scored another touchdown to take a 45-28 lead.
Oof. Yeah, that failed onside kick felt like a real turning point. It just sucked the air right out of Ford Field.
It did.
But even with the score getting out of hand, there were still some incredible moments. You know, did you see that plays that make you jump out of your seat?
Oh, yeah. This game was a highlight reel waiting to happen.
Right.
And we're going to unpack some of those jaw-dropping moments right after the break.
Can't wait.
We were talking about those highlight reel moments, and believe me, this game had them.
Yeah, I felt like I needed a rewind button just to keep up.
So many big plays.
Walk us through some of those unforgettable moments. Which ones really stood out to you?
Oh, you got to start with Josh Allen, right?
I mean, the guy was playing like a video game character.
There was this one play, a deep bomb to Keon Coleman for like 64 yards, and he just flicked his wrist, and the ball seemed to hang in the air forever.
Yeah.
Before landing perfectly in Coleman's hands, it was almost effortless.
He makes it look so easy.
But that arm talent is just insane.
Right, throwing a ball that far, that accurately.
I mean, it takes years of practice.
And then on the Lions side, you had Amon-Ra St. Brown making the Bills' secondary look silly.
Oh, yeah. He was incredible.
His route, running his knack for finding open space.
You can't teach that.
His 66-yard touchdown reception was just beautiful.
Poetry in motion.
I remember that play. He just blew past those defenders like they were standing still.
He's special, that's for sure.
It was like he had a cheat code for extra speed.
And speaking of special, we can't forget about the most unexpected touchdown of the night.
Oh.
Dan Skipper, the offensive lineman, catching a touchdown pass.
Come on.
You don't see that every day.
That was one for the record books.
An offensive lineman.
Catching a touchdown pass? I bet even he didn't see that coming.
Right. It was just a brilliantly designed trick play, perfectly executed.
It was.
And it really shows you that the Lions coaching staff is willing to think outside the box, you know,
Right.
to take risks even when the game seems out of reach.
Yeah, it definitely injected some excitement into the game.
It did.
But all those highlight reel plays aside, the Lions still found themselves trailing as the clock ticked down.
Yeah, it must have been nerve-wracking for Lions fans. You know, they were so close to clinching a playoff spot,
They were.
but they were up against a tough opponent.
They were.
And speaking of tension, let's talk about those final 2 minutes of the game.
Right.
The Lions were down 48-35, but they mounted this incredible comeback attempt.
They did. They almost pulled it off, too.
It was a flurry of passes. Goff finding his receivers in tight coverage. The clock, their biggest enemy.
The Detroit News article mentioned that Gibbs scored a touchdown with just 12 seconds left on the clock.
Bringing them within 6 points. But that onside kick attempt just didn't go their way. It's those fine margins, you know, those moments of chance that can make or break a game.
For sure.
And while the Lions ultimately fell short, their last-ditch effort really says a lot about their resilience.
They didn't give up, even when the odds were stacked against them.
Nope, they kept fighting.
It's that never-say-die attitude that's made this Lions team so captivating to watch.
It has.
They've come a long way, and they're proving that they're not just pretenders.
They're contenders.
They're here to stay.
I agree. And this game, even in a loss, solidified that notion. You know, they went toe-to-toe with one of the best teams in the league.
They did.
And they showed that they can compete at the highest level.
So we've talked a lot about the offensive fireworks. The highlight reel plays the nail-biting finish.
We have.
But let's zoom out for a second and look at the bigger picture. What are the key takeaways from this game beyond just the final score? What did it reveal about the Lions and their future prospects?
Well, I think the most important takeaway is that the Lions are for real.
Right.
They're not just a flash in the pan. They've got a talented roster,
Right.
a smart coaching staff, and a quarterback who's playing at an elite level.
They've definitely exceeded expectations.
Yeah, they have.
But are there any areas of concern, any weaknesses that might hold them back from reaching their full potential?
Well, the over-reliance on the passing game is something to watch.
Okay.
You know,
Okay.
their inability to establish a consistent running game against the Bills is a red flag.
It is.
It makes their offense predictable, and it puts a lot of pressure on Goff to carry the load.
It's like a puzzle with a missing piece.
It is.
They have all the elements for greatness, but they need to find that balance on offense.
Exactly. They need to diversify their attack, take some pressure off of Goff, and keep defenses guessing.
Now let's shift our focus to the Buffalo Bills.
Okay.
They escaped with a win,
They did.
but did this game reveal any chinks in their armor?
That's a good question.
Any areas where they might be vulnerable?
Well, their defense, while generally solid, did give up 42 points to the Lions.
That's a lot.
It is, and it's concerning, especially against a team that struggled to run the ball.
Right. It suggests that even the best defenses can have off nights.
They can.
But are there any specific areas where the Bills seemed particularly vulnerable?
Well, their secondary had some lapses in coverage.
Okay.
Allowing the Lions to make big plays downfield.
Right.
They'll need to tighten things up in that area if they want to contain the elite passing attacks they're likely to face in the playoffs.
So for the Bills, it's about maintaining their offensive firepower while shoring up those defensive vulnerabilities.
Precisely. They have the talent and the experience to make a deep playoff run.
They do.
But they can't afford to overlook those defensive lapses.
No, they can't. This game really had it all: offensive fireworks, defensive struggles, highlight reel plays, a nail-biting finish.
It was a classic.
But there's still more to uncover.
Oh, yeah.
Especially those hidden stories within the game that might have escaped casual observation.
And that's where our deep dive gets even more interesting. We're going to delve into those subtle details.
Okay.
Those moments that might have foreshadowed the future for both of these teams.
I like it.
So stay tuned for the final part of our analysis, where we'll connect the dots and uncover even more insights from this epic matchup.
So we've been breaking down this Lions-Bills game, and sometimes it's not the big, flashy plays that tell the story, right? It's those subtle shifts.
Yeah, the little details.
Those cracks in the facade that give you a glimpse into a team's strengths and weaknesses.
Exactly. You got to read between the lines.
And this Detroit News recap with all the play-by-play gives us a lot to work with.
Yeah, a lot of clues to uncover.
You mentioned the Bills' defense having some lapses earlier.
I did.
Any specific examples come to mind?
Well, early in the second quarter, the Lions, they were trailing 14-0, and they put together this really impressive drive.
Yeah.
It started with a 13-yard run by their rookie running back, Gibbs.
Oh, yeah. He showed some burst on that one.
He did. He made it tough for the Bills to contain him.
A spark of life when they desperately needed it, right?
Yeah, for sure.
I remember thinking, okay, maybe they're not out of this yet.
And that drive ended with a touchdown pass from Goff to Tim Patrick.
Cutting the Bills' lead in half.
Exactly. And what's interesting is that the Bills' defense, they're usually so aggressive.
Suffocating.
Yeah, they seemed a bit hesitant during that sequence.
Almost like they were surprised the Lions could move the ball so effectively.
Right. Maybe a little bit of underestimating their opponent, or maybe some early game jitters,
Yeah, right.
But those little cracks in their defensive armor are worth noting.
They are, for sure.
Makes you wonder if other teams might be watching that game tape thinking, maybe there's a blueprint here for how to attack the Bills' defense.
Right.
All right, so now shifting gears back to the Lions. We talked about their struggles running the ball.
Maybe did.
But there was one play, a trick play, that really caught my eye.
Oh, yeah, I know exactly which one you're talking about. Montgomery, the running back, takes the handoff, then flips it back to Goff, who throws a beautiful pass to St. Brown for a big gain.
24 yards.
Textbook execution.
It was late in the first quarter. The Lions were down 14-0, and that play just seemed to inject some much-needed energy into their offense.
Risky call, but it paid off big time.
It did, and that's what I find so intriguing,
What's that?
It shows that the Lions, even when they're facing a tough opponent, they're not afraid to get creative.
Just gamble a bit.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like they're saying, we're not backing down. We're going to come at you with everything we got.
Right. It speaks to a certain level of confidence.
Yeah, right.
A belief in their ability to make those unconventional plays work.
It's a good sign.
Especially for a team that's still relatively young and trying to establish its identity.
Okay, so we've talked about the Lions' offensive potential, their resilience, their willingness to take risks.
Yeah.
But what about their defense?
Well, that's the big question mark, isn't it?
They gave up 48 points to the Bills.
They did.
Is there anything in this Detroit News recap that suggests they can improve on that side of the ball?
Well, as we mentioned before, they were missing some key players due to injuries.
Right.
And their return should definitely bolster the defense. But even with those absences, there were moments where they showed real promise.
Like when they held the Bills to a field goal late in the game.
Which gave the Lions a chance to mount that final comeback.
Exactly.
That was a crucial stop.
It was.
And they also forced a couple of turnovers, which created opportunities for their offense.
So it's not all doom and gloom on the defensive side.
Not at all. The potential is there. It's about consistency,
Okay.
Eliminating those mental errors and missed tackles that can lead to big plays for the opposing team.
It's work in progress.
It is, but there's reason for optimism.
There is. So after taking this deep dive into this Lions-Bills matchup, what's your overall assessment of the Lions? Can they make a deep playoff run?
They're definitely a team to watch. They have a high-powered offense, a quarterback who's playing at an elite level, and a defense that with some improvement can be a force to be reckoned with.
But they're also in a tough conference.
Oh, yeah.
With a lot of strong contenders.
No doubt the road ahead won't be easy.
It won't.
But I think they've shown they have the talent and the heart to compete with anyone.
And that's what makes them so exciting, right?
It is.
They're a team on the rise. A team with a lot of unknowns, but with the potential to do something special.
Exactly. They're a team that's defying expectations, rewriting the narrative, and making people believe that anything is possible.
And for you listening, I think that's the real takeaway from this deep dive.
What's that?
Don't just watch the game, feel it, you know? Pay attention to those subtle moments, those hidden stories within the game, because that's where you'll find the true meaning.
Yeah.
The essence of what makes this sport so captivating.
And as you watch the rest of the Lions season unfold, remember that sometimes the most valuable lessons are learned in defeat.
That's a good point.
It's how they respond to those challenges, how they adapt and evolve, that will ultimately determine their fate.
This Lions-Bills matchup was a classic, a game that'll be talked about for years to come.
It was a good one.
And we hope this deep dive has given you a new appreciation for the depth and complexity of this incredible sport.
We do.
Thanks for joining us on this journey, and until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep diving deep.
Sound the alarm. I'm coming up. We'll have a ball. I'm sweet like a buttercup. You're a Barbie doll. Show them all what I'm